hashtag Launch America from your favorite social media website. As for me, this isn't my first one. I've seen a lot, but every one is exciting. Now, coming up, we're going to go into a readiness poll, as I mentioned. Currently, right now, on other nets, the SpaceX launch director is checking to verify the Dragon team is ready and that the NASA launch management team is ready. They'll come back at about T-minus 47 minutes with instructions to the SpaceX Falcon 9 team to make their final assessments. Then they log into the procedure. It's a little different than the old days where you would hear a go, 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 position by position, all up and down the row. In this electronic age, everybody just clicks on whether to go or no go. The launch director will then, at T-minus 45 minutes, summarize the end of the poll and will then provide instructions for the team. At the same time, we will begin getting ready for the crew access arm retraction, and we'll show you that on one of the screens that we've got up.
When we're getting sniped, it's talking about his tripwire.
Now, currently, we are continuing to monitor the weather. The weather is still red. It is improving. We're looking at one cell between the radar and the pad. We're keeping our fingers crossed that conditions will improve, but we're going to be watching that for about another 15 minutes. So it looks like we're going to be good to begin propellant load once we hear the polls, but we still have to get the get the range green so that we can actually do the launch in just 47 minutes from now. Let's listen to Countdown Net for a moment.
I'm trying to decide if I should play a quick round of Valorant or if I should just stick with this. Because I do know that's not supposed to happen for another maybe like 50 minutes. The thing is that if I bail off this, I mean I could try to but I am doing
right now, coming up on 46 minutes, 10 seconds before launch. Didn't hear any significant chatter coming over Countdown 1.
Yes, launch director to Countdown Net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load. Launch control, proceed with swing and spur. Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes.
If nobody's,
Thank you, launch control.
nobody's gonna gift you, if you want this, but we need
A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the Countdown Net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring for Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm instructions. Here in Fire Room 4, the event of a fire alarm, key operators, previously briefed, will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, we will evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. One final reminder, we'll be arming the launch escape system momentarily. Need all personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation from the second stage. Crew access arm retract has started.
And you've heard Mike Taylor, the SpaceX launch director, give instructions to the team. We've also just heard the call. The crew access arm retraction is underway. Great view from the camera inside the White Room as we see the arm moving away from the Dragon capsule, one of the major events necessary to get down to T0. The next one coming up will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule. Now, right now, the next plan for Falcon 9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin loading propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, Falcon 9's looking good. Dragon's looking good. The range continues to be go for launch in terms of the clearance around the launch pad, both the air and the sea space. Looking at the flight corridor, the ground stations, the NASA tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support. And we just continue to monitor the weather Our team is getting constant updates. We're monitoring weather data sensors around the launch site, looking to make sure that we can get everything into the green position. The one that we're mostly looking at right now is how much rain we're going to get between now and liftoff. Whether it's just going to be mild precipitation that's within the rules for loading propellant. That's what the expectation is, but we're going to continue to watch that. So fingers crossed, but right now coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, 18 seconds and counting, everything but the weather's go, and the weather is trending in the right direction. So we've got our fingers crossed here. At this time, we're going to send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action is picking up on the launch pad.
Thanks, John I. Now that countdown clock is continuing to tick, and we are 42 minutes and 46 seconds away from launch. Now, as you just saw, the crew arm retracted. That is the last major visual milestone before liftoff. And we should be hearing out on the net soon confirmation that the launch escape system is armed. When that happens, all 8 of the Super Draco throttle valves are opened, which means that those engines can ignite.
For
Section 7.
This kid.
Okay. So that means those 8 throttle valves are opened, and if those Super Dracos needed to fire in order for Dragon to escape off of the pad, they could.
And so things running just a little bit ahead of schedule right now.
Field lead is complete.
Now, we just saw the crew access arm retract just a minute ago. We saw NASA astronauts Doug Hurley.
In 7.2, our visors are closed, and we're arming the launch escape system.
So we just heard the astronauts confirm that they are about to arm the launch escape system. That happens just before fueling begins, which we expect to happen in just a couple of minutes. We saw Bob and Doug suit up a little over 3 hours ago. Then we watched them drive out to Launch Complex 39A. They were assisted by the SpaceX ground team with Crew Dragon ingress. That happened a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then we saw the spacecraft hatch close. And again, just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract. We just heard that the crew armed the launch escape system. And in just a few minutes, we are going to hear the call that they have started propellant loading.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
So we just heard that verification that the launch escape system is armed.
We're switching to Jan 2.
And we are going to send it over to Hawthorne to take us through prop loading. Jesse?
From the parachutes to the launch escape system, SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch vehicle ever flown. And joining us today, we have SpaceX's Nick Pacone, who was our mission manager for our in-flight abort mission earlier this year and currently works on the Starlink team. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. I'm here at the Launch and Landing Recovery Center with the recovery team and our Dragon ground operations team monitoring the launch.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about the critical safety features on this new version of Dragon?
Sure. So Dragon 2 was designed with long-term reuse and reliability in mind. So fundamentally, there are multiple layers of redundancy to any of the failure modes that we could conceive of, that NASA could conceive of when we were working to design and test this vehicle over the past few years. But in the event that we encounter an unforeseen failure mode or multiple failures which push us outside of our design space, Dragon also has backup systems and operational controls intended to keep Bob and Doug safe. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today, but the launch escape system is the primary backup system that we have.
Wait, how much is the recon expert?
Here on being fuel, all the way up until orbital insertion.
Oh, dang it.
At a high level, the launch escape system, in the event of a major Falcon anomaly or emergency, will terminate Falcon thrust, separate Dragon from Falcon, and it'll use Dragon's 8 Super Draco engines to quickly pull the vehicle away from any kind of Falcon anomaly.
And you talked a lot about the launch escape system. How exactly is that activated? Is it autonomous? Is it manually activated?
Definitely. So for this system to work as designed, you have to remember that the vehicle could be flying at hundreds or thousands of miles an hour through the lower atmosphere. So it's really important that it's extremely fast and highly reliable with very low chance of false positives. The launch escape system fundamentally is set to look at a set of pre-programmed criteria which are on board the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon are looking at high rate telemetry, looking for abnormal vehicle dynamics, loss of communication between critical systems, or manual commanding. Our launch director and chief engineer, who you've heard a lot from today, are capable of sending a manual command to Dragon to initiate a launch escape. And Bob and Doug are also always able to actuate the launch escape handle and initiate a launch escape themselves as well. Now that the system is armed, all of this is currently active on the vehicle.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it. And we did have an in-flight abort test earlier this year to test this out. Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
Definitely. It was possibly the most flight-like test of an orbital class booster in history. It was a fully flight-like test using a full Falcon 9 rocket, which we had to knowingly destroy in order to get this fully integrated system. For folks who didn't get a chance to see it, the vehicle followed a normal crew launch trajectory about a minute and a half into flight. We had Dragon autonomously trigger the launch escape system based on a reconfiguration of those triggers I was just talking about. And thankfully, we had we continued through flight, had a successful parachute deployment and splashdown, and we did see Falcon rather spectacularly blow up about 10 seconds after separation. It's important to recognize that all of that happens from command to actual separation of the vehicle in under half a second.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us and talking through those details with us. Enjoy the launch today. So we're going to send it back to KSC with Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. We are about a minute and a half away from propellant load. At T-minus 35 minutes, we should hear the call out on the nets that propellant load has started. So that's about a minute and 13 seconds away.
Hey, Marie and Lauren, I am getting goosebumps over here. This is an exciting moment. When I was sitting in the vehicle, when we retracted everything, when all the prop was getting loaded up, I was just going through my crew notebook. I was thinking about, what my first step would be if there was a malfunction, because usually everything goes nominally when you fly to space, but you have to think about the things that you have to take care of, the first steps you have to take care of. And on my mission, I was calling out the abort calls, like if we had lost an engine, where would we go next, when the different abort calls around the country and around the world. So I think that's what those guys are probably thinking about now, and just really getting ready for this mission to go off.
Absolutely, and we're just now about 20 seconds from when we expect propellant loading to start. Again, that's fueling of the rocket.
All right, we're getting close. We should hear that call out any second now on the nets. So let's listen in.
Propellant load has started.
Fantastic. So prop load has started. We've started loading liquid oxygen on stage 1 and stage 2. And liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene. So now that we are 34 minutes and 42 seconds away from the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011, we know that the launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling. Dragon prop load happened weeks ago, actually just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And those propellants, which are MMH or monomethyl hydrogen, that's our fuel, and NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's our oxidizer, those not only feed the Draco engines that propel Dragon on orbit, but they also supply those 8 Super Draco engines of the launch escape system. So I have one right here, a little model. It doesn't come off the stand.
Don't break it, Lauren.
All right, I know it's very nice. So as you can see, the Dragon is actually broken up into 4 quads, and each quad has 2 of the Super Draco engines for a total of 8 of them. And as I mentioned, they are biprop engines. They have MMH and NTO as their oxidizer. Now, most abort systems from past space vehicles, I believe like Soyuz, Mercury, Apollo, they all had a pointy escape tower on top where there was essentially like a mini rocket engine with rocket engines on top. And if they weren't used, that escape tower would have to jettison itself from the vehicle. If it was used, it would be used to lift the vehicle off of the rocket. Well, Dragon is a little bit different in that its escape system is actually integrated into the vehicle, and that's great for a couple of reasons. One,
$40 worth of candy,
one less thing you have to jettison on a nominal flight, and so they're
we got the
pretty
money
dormant,
and
just
candy.
those throttle valves open unless they're used, and hopefully they never have
So
to
it's
be.
just like, oh.
And yeah, I mean, the other thing that offers
So
you is the
snacking
ability
time.
to escape from the pad all the way to orbit. Because if you jettisoned your escape system prior to that, you couldn't. So yeah. That's a little Dragon there.
Again,
All right.
new era, much safer design.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for walking us through that, Lauren. Again, the launch escape system is armed. That protects Bob and Doug so that if something were to go wrong, they can shoot off the pad away from the rocket and parachute to safety in the ocean. That is such a crucial safety capability. And so now we want to go over to Hawthorne for an operational update with John.
Thanks, Marie. We are counting down those final minutes. Everything is still looking good on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon vehicles for an on-time launch, but weather is trending the wrong way right now. We're keeping our ears open in case we hear that the weather is going to be no-go for the rest of the count. Right now, we are counting down at T-minus 32 minutes.
Stage 1 locks and
Falcon 9
RP1
did
fluorides
begin
are nominal.
propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, right on time. The propellants we use on Falcon 9 are a fuel, which is rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, refined petroleum. We use an oxidizer, and that's the super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX as we call it. Those two propellants come together, but they don't light, so we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-tub. You might see that just before first stage ignition or maybe later in the second stage ignition. You get a green-colored flame as the T-tub comes out into the oxygen, and that ignites the main engines right before the rocket takes off or the second stage engine lights. Now, currently in the fueling, RP1 fuel is about 10% full on the first stage. That's the bottom 2/3 of the stack of the vehicle you can see on the left. The first stage is that long white cylinder at the bottom, plus that black cylinder called the inner stage. That's the entire first stage that we're loading with LOX and RP1 kerosene. That's the part that comes back to Earth. The second stage just above it, the white cylinder, and then above that will be the Dragon trunk and the capsule. Now currently, the second stage is also loading fuel with RP1. That's about 8% full right now. We are loading liquid oxygen on the first stage. The second stage liquid oxygen load will begin at T-minus 16.5 minutes if the weather cooperates. So LOX loading will then continue on both the first and second stage until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading is also underway into pressure vessels on the second stage. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is being pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. Dragon on board the spacecraft. You can see the astronauts are monitoring systems while propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. Now, when we
Stage
flew
1 cryo-helium load
the
has
first
started.
demo flight last year and then the in-flight escape test earlier this year, the sounds inside the Dragon capsule were recorded. So as part of the training, the sounds of the propellant loading were played back to acclimate the crew to what they're experiencing now. I'm listening to some discussion on one of the back nets, trying to track where we are with the weather criteria. We're just passing another weather gate right now, trying to see whether or not the conditions are go. In certain situations, when the weather is no-go, you have to wait 30 minutes, and we are now inside of 30 minutes. But if the cloud moves away, if the conditions improve, we may be able to continue the countdown for another 14 minutes and reassess. So we're waiting to see whether or not we can continue the count. Currently we are. The range, they're ready to support with no problems in the air and the sea space area. But again, the weather, that's the one that's
I approve
looking
of this
bad,
message.
and we're going to continue to listen. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we're going to have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity on May 30th.
For Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our Cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, with two noticeable differences: docking and splashdown.
As we await T-0 in just a little over 28 minutes from now, ground operations teams just doing those final series of system checks, making sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for liftoff, and really keeping an eye on that weather. And you're just continuing to get live views of the teams. You've got Falcon 9 and Dragon on your left, and then Bob and Doug on the right as they prepare at the Cape for liftoff.
Once we hit
I'm gonna cut the
T0
call.
and a successful launch occurs, we will watch
I'll
Falcon
double.
9 and Dragon make their ascent until Falcon 9 and first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the space station.
And once it gets on orbit, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where Dragon will execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the International Space Station. And you're seeing some of that track in the animation on your screen right now. After doing enough of
Dragon,
those burns,
SpaceX for
they'll put
weather
Dragon... Oh, sounds like we're going to get a weather update real quick for the crew.
Go ahead, Spacer.
Yeah, we're currently just evaluating a constraint on the field mill rule, which looks at lightning energy dissipation. We expect to have an update at about T-20 and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Hey, for anyone who's new, don't forget to drop a like on the video. I'm doing a quick small giveaway.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
So if
Copy, so I'll
anyone
give you
wants to
some
enter
more
that giveaway,
words in about 6
please
minutes.
comment a number between 1 through 100. I know some of you
Okay,
may
so
not
it
play
sounds
Fortnite
like
anymore, which
we're going to
I
find out
don't either.
in about 6
But
minutes
it's
if
for
we're going to
those
have
of you
enough time.
who play
And John and I
Fortnite
was
still,
referring to a couple of those weather
don't forget to
situations where we
comment
have to
down
have
below
a
between 1
certain
through
amount of
100
time. In this case,
gift
with the field mills,
that
about 15
new-
minutes. So they
that
have
new,
until about
loading
16 minutes and 30 seconds to
cannot
really make sure that we're going to have enough time for that to dissipate. So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
And a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if we are launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which used a process called berthing. Now, berthing requires a spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously.
Stage 2 cryo-helium load started.
Autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism. It's the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules together on board station. It's a little bit slower process than docking, but the hatches are significantly larger than docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up large cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So, We have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
That's an incredible number. I think, realizing that you don't have to be a military astronaut or a NASA astronaut to fly in space. You can be a regular just a regular person going up to space on a SpaceX type rocket. So I think that's why the numbers are so high.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on SES 129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it, and we knew where we were going. And, we always know that, you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen, but we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios. And so, we want to be safe. We want to be safe for our families, and we'll, do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it.
I know.
And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
After the giveaway.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is. And those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
Hopefully the weather's fine, because I keep on hearing that the weather could affect it, could cancel it. And
These
bump
clouds
it up
can
to
seem
May
really
30th.
deceiving at times, right? You see the blue skies peeking through, and you think everything's fine, but
So if it does
you just
get
don't
canceled
know.
and bumped
That's why
up
we
to
have
May
those launch
30th,
weather
then
officers.
I will launch them
Absolutely,
then
and
as
I
well.
know, we've talked about it
sure to
before,
check
but
that out if it
it's
does
not
get
just the
canceled.
weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had in the past, there's always a very good chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria
The weather updates, we'll find
that you
out
have to meet.
if it is going to get canceled or not in about.
And we're going to
4
listen in
seconds.
now. We're just seconds away from
If it does get
a
canceled,
weather
just do the
update.
giveaway right
Stage
away,
2,
and
RP1
then-
load complete.
So be sure to enter if you want to. If not, that's perfectly fine, because it's really just a loading screen, so there's nothing really exciting about it. If you guys want to, please enter.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0.
Oh,
1645 local. I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in with you in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about T-minus 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below,
I think their thing just cut out. I don't hear anything.
And that didn't sound great right there. That was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision.
Yep. Did it go out? Hoping that we can watch it today, because kind of excited to see it. But it is 4:15, so looks like that we are not doing the giveaway. Whoever's in here, please send hi, because I am kind of curious to see who's in here. And plus, I'm bored. So I want to.
And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Innsbrucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather. We're still
T-minus 18 minutes and counting.
LD is
we are still red on weather.
Expect an update from LD.
We're waiting in about another minute for one final check with weather. We're going to check at T-minus 17 minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
Continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control would end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please. Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
Sorry about that, guys.
5.100. It was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day, and we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, but they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like at T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into safely taking the propellants. The pressurization gases back off the first and second stages. As things get into a safe configuration, then we will disarm the escape system on Dragon, and we'll bring the crew access arm back around the spacecraft. So right now, we got down to just inside 17 minutes. The hardware was working very well on both Dragon and spacecraft. We had the fuel loading going on. We had liquid oxygen loading going on, everything but second stage. And the weather just needed a little bit more time to clear the conditions. We didn't have that time because we had an instantaneous window. And so with that, SpaceX launch director had to call upon the input from weather.
Dragon, copy
had to
all
call
about 30
a
minutes.
scrub for
Thank
the
you,
day per the safety rules that we have for this flight. So right now the team is undergoing the post-scrub operations on both Dragon as well as Falcon 9, working with the range. No issues being reported right now as we start to go through that sequence. Everything looks good. And Dan, we had a good webcast going here until the very end. So we'll look at it as now we've had another great dry rehearsal. Last Saturday we did a dry one, I should say, and today we've done a wet dress rehearsal. But sorry, we just couldn't get there, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John I. And obviously, we can't control the weather. We came right down to the wire there, hoping we could just squeeze in between those cloud systems to get a launch today, but it wasn't to be. But it doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have another attempt coming up in just 3 days, so we're going to be doing this all over again, essentially, on Saturday, on the 30th. And that launch attempt is going to be coming at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time, so a little bit earlier in the day. It's going to look largely the same to everything that we saw today, with the crew waking up, going through suit up, making their way to the pad. So we're going to feel a lot of deja vu, I think, on Saturday.
But still exciting. Safety is always first, so if weather was not there for us today, hopefully Saturday it will be there for us and we will have a safe launch on Saturday.
Yeah, the initial weather report still had us at about, I think, a 40% possibility of violation, so weather